viewer to my channel knows, actually, I have a very love-hate relationship with martial arts, and sometimes it's always been such a huge part of my life that there are times when I actually don't really want to talk about martial arts. I'd much rather have a discussion with somebody about something which is non-martial arts related. And we've done live streams before about very different topics, without even mentioning taekwondo or karate or whatever. And they've actually been some of my personally preferred favorite live streams. Also thought going ahead as well actually was actually taking maybe the channel into like other avenues as well, or even making a second channel where the focus will be away from taekwondo and it will be talking about other stuff. And politics is always a very heated topic. It's a very divisive topic. Everybody seems to have an opinion about politics, whether that opinion is qualified or otherwise. It's just something that people seem to enjoy talking about. And I would very much like to actually have debates and encourage discourse about any sort of socio-economic political discussions in the world today. And this kind of then goes back to the whole Charlie Kirk narrative. I'm not going to put myself out there as being a vox populi of replacing Charlie Kirk or trying to create Charlie Kirk from the channel. I don't want to do that. However, we all know what has happened with Charlie Kirk in recent weeks. I don't think there's any way we can really get around that. It's coming up on media, it's coming up on social media all the time, regardless of what one may actually think about that, or what one may think about him as an individual. Now, admittedly, I had only really seen Kirk's videos in passing. I'd never sat down and watched any of them. I'd seen clips of them. I knew who he was generally. I knew what he did, but I never sit down and kind of got involved in what he was saying, in the same way that I may listen to somebody such as Jordan Peterson or Douglas Murray, for instance, who I can sit down and listen to Douglas Murray ad nauseum, basically. But I feel that's probably because Douglas Murray is English. Being English myself, I feel as though that maybe I can relate a lot more to Douglas Murray in what he's saying, because he talks a lot of topics about the UK, and I can see what he talks about happening in the UK, so it resonates with me. Whereas, in the case of Kirk, a lot of what he discusses is American-based, which shouldn't be a surprise because he is American and he was American, sorry. And what happens in America affects him, and he can relate to in a lot more, in a way that I just cannot, due to geographical and nationality-wise reasons. What I will actually have to say, though, is that, first and foremost, I am saddened by his death. As a bereavement counsellor myself, I'm saddened by hearing about anybody's death. Death is a part of life, ironically, but it's not a pleasant part of life. And I feel most people would say that they could probably do without having death in their life. And sadly, death comes for us all. One of the biggest ironies of life is that you're not going to get out of life alive. And death will come for me one day, in some shape or form. Death will come for every single one of us. However, I feel, that being said, death can be natural, and then death can be hastened. And somebody once said to me, or I saw a quote once, something like, life is death postponed. I believe it could be Voltaire. I may be mistaken on that. But hearing about the death of a young man who probably woke up that day and most certainly didn't expect to die is saddening. It is saddening to me. So, with that being said, even though I didn't know him personally, I only knew of him, but regardless, and I'm saying this irrespective of his political affiliations, I'm saying this irrespective of his personal tastes, what aspect he identified with leaning, to hear about the death of anybody I don't feel is a positive. Especially, as I said, somebody so young, and especially somebody who had a wife and some kids who are now going to grow up fatherless. I personally wouldn't want that on anybody, regardless of whether I necessarily like them as a person or not. I don't feel that or may not have resonated. I don't feel as though my personal feelings in that warrant me or anybody. I mean, I wouldn't go and celebrate someone's death, as I said, but I feel that if somebody was meant to go off and have have enjoyment out of the loss of somebody's life, but I feel says a lot more about that individual and where they're at mentally and emotionally, and even on a mature level or immature level, to be more accurate. It says where they're at. And no sooner had Kirk sadly died, we saw videos coming around on social media. Say we, I mean myself. I'm only one person, and my cat. But I saw videos on social media of many people celebrating this and saying discourse along the lines of, "Oh, he deserved it. He had it coming to him." Some people say, "Yeah, it's a good shooter, good shot," and all this kind of stuff. And you look and think, hang on a second, just take a moment to just listen to what you're saying. You're essentially saying that it's good that somebody has died, and not just died naturally, of natural causes, but they have died via a violent machination. Somebody has been assassinated, and you feel that's cause for celebration. What does that say about you to celebrate that? And that was one of the things that kind of, I feel it triggered something in me, to be completely honest. I looked at this and felt, okay, but you think that's a good thing, and why would you say this is a good thing? And then when you actually try getting the justification, asking these people, what is your justification for believing that somebody being shot is intrinsically positive? What is your justification for that? And a lot of things which I've seen, people have said stuff like, yeah, but Kirk was a fascist. That's quite an extreme thing to accuse somebody of being. He was a fascist. Okay. What else? Why else do you feel as though Kirk deserves to get shot? Then they say things along the lines of, well, he was racist. Okay. Any other reasons? Did Kirk physically harm someone? Was he a child molester? Did he go out and beat people up in the street? Did he drive over homeless people? Did he con old grannies out of all their life savings? Like you hear these Indian scam callers, which incidentally, actually, about a year ago, actually, an Indian scam caller tried to scam me. But I'd just been watching Pierogi. I'm meeting up there because that's usually where I watch my TV. But I watch Pierogi if you're into like scammer payback kind of stuff. And Pierogi had told like basically viewers of like, right, be careful of these Indian scams. And like the day or so after that, an Indian scammer tried getting caught to me, and I was like, nah, I know what your plan is. But that detracts slightly. But did Kirk do that? To the best of my knowledge, no. All he was guilty of doing was basically going onto university campuses, college campuses, and encouraging discourse, encouraging debate. And he did so, actually, from what I've seen, in respectful ways. It wasn't a case of like in England. In England these days, it's sad. There is no debate. In England, everything's polarised. You're either left, you're either right, you're either a Brexiteer, you're a Remainer, you're a anti-vaxxer, you're a Jabberwock. There's no middle ground anymore in England or in English debates. And indeed, debate, I feel, is something which is discouraged. People say this day and age, or feeling I've certainly seen myself from my line of work, people don't like having debates because when you have debates, your views are being challenged. Or it's encouraging you to introspectively look at yourself, look at your cognitive makeup, look at your cognitive mapping, and ask yourself some pretty hard-hitting and deep questions. And people being people generally don't like doing that. People don't like to look inside of themselves and admit, actually, maybe in this situation I'm wrong. And that, I feel, is actually the build-up of a very narcissistic society, or a narcissistic culture, which we, especially in England, have built ourselves up to believe. We're generally conditioned, I'd say, if you want to get maybe Pavlovian into it, we're conditioned to believe that we have these opinions, we're entitled to these opinions, and these opinions are right. And if you believe any different, then may God help you, because I'm going to rip your knee. And that is the general modus operandi that people in England, especially, are encouraged to do. We're not encouraged to disagree, agree to disagree. We're not encouraged to respect the other side anymore. Everything is so polarized. And I feel that's very much the case with what happened to Kirk, was the fact that he encouraged polite discourse, he encouraged polite, respectful debate. And with debates, you can still have your opinions. You don't have to agree to what the other person is debating with you about, but you can still show respect. And a lesson which I learned a long time ago, which I feel is worth sharing, is that friends have debates, idiots have arguments. I will love to have debates with everybody. And on my channel, if I want to go back to the martial arts side of my channel, there's this martial art I have a bit of a chip on my shoulder about called Choi Kwang Do. And I make videos about Choi Kwang Do. And a lot of people who do Choi Kwang Do come onto my channel and they challenge my mode of thinking. I actually quite enjoy that, because I enjoy reading these comments of people saying that I'm an idiot and all this kind of stuff. It's a bit, I suppose, sadomasochistic, but it's enjoyable. But I will always healthily challenge them back. And I like that, because I'm hoping I can in some way encourage them to think outside the box. But at the same time, I'd like them to challenge me outside the box as well. So that's my martial arts debate that I have with Choi Kwang Do. I put a video about Choi Kwang Do. I encourage the debate with Choi Kwang Do. And they come back. And I actually have had some quite mature debates with Choi Kwang Do people. They are few and far between, but they do exist. And I like that, because somewhere in there could be a Choi Kwang Do person who makes me think, look at myself and go, actually, Sam, on this occasion, you're incorrect. In which case I think, well, that's great, because somebody's now highlighted a weakness in my armor, which I now need to go away and rectify. It encourages me to think. It's encouraging my cognitive workload to work. But in this day and age, people now don't like it if you think otherwise. If you have a view which is different from somebody else, people generally don't like it. And you get people who then always radicalize your perspective, irrespective of whether it's radical or not. You could literally say, as an example, oh, I don't know, I would like to eat sausage and bacon this morning for breakfast. And then you'll get somebody who will look at it and say, so essentially what you're saying is that we should kill all vegans? People will always radicalize, or people have a tendency to radicalize your belief if it doesn't coexist or rub with their own opinion. Then you start getting psychology, something called in-group, out-group thinking, where basically people who think likewise to yourself become an echo chamber, but they become the in-group. They become one of you, or you see them as one of your own. And those maintaining different opinions, again, they don't even have to be radical, violent, any opinions like that. Simply just different opinions are then regarded as the out-group. And by its very term, that's a label. You've labeled somebody out-group, out being the operative name or word, because they are outside. They're outsiders. They're external. They're not part of the core. They're not part of the in-group. And that, I feel, is what we are seeing very much with Kirk. So I've seen a lot of videos celebrating the death of the late Mr. Kirk. And I've always kind of veered away from that. I've looked and thought, you know what? I'm still going to respect your opinions, even though a lot of these opinions, a lot of these people have put forward, I would personally say are quite unsettling. Some of them are very violent, saying stuff like wearing T-shirts with firearms on them or doing gun impressions. Even then, I was still looking and say, okay, I'm still prepared to respect your right to have that opinion. The one that actually got me, and I saw this last night, it was a video or a video clip by that rap duo Bob Vylan, and you've probably seen it in the title to this. Bob Vylan came to prominence, I suppose, if you want to use that word, during Glastonbury Festival in England during the summer, where one of the members went on stage and started chanting "Death to the IDF." I believe there was a criminal investigation about that as well, because people were saying that was inciting hatred, it was inciting violence. Under UK law, actually, that would have been inciting violence. If you go out and say "death to anyone," it's inciting violence. I could go out on the street now and literally shout out "death to gingerhead people," death to, I don't know, death to Welsh people, death to cats, death to budgerigars, death to cows. Under UK law, that would be me. They would look at me as though I'm inciting violence. I want people to go out and kill those people or those animals, animal cruelty. So that is how UK law stands. So for somebody to stand on stage and say "death to the IDF," if you were to take UK law by letter for letter, yeah, that is inciting violence. We don't know if that Bob Vylan, when he was shouting that, he could say in his defense, "Yeah, I was just joking." Did we know that? You know, you could get anybody. You could be watching this now, and I could say something quite inflammatory, and somebody get offended by it, take it to the police, and I could then say, "Oh, but I was only joking." Sure, it probably was, but viewers don't know that. Likewise, at this Bob Vylan fest at Glastonbury, he was chanting "Death to the IDF." He could have said in his defense, "Yeah, I was only joking about it," but we didn't know he was. We didn't know he was joking. That's why that stuff, like saying stuff like that, is so delicate. Firstly, why would you want to chant "death to anybody anyway"? That in and of itself is the sign of an unhealthy psyche. Normal, healthy-minded individuals don't chant "death" to people. That's usually used as like political slogans that you get in Iran. After the 1979 revolution, Iranians went through the streets of Tehran chanting "death to the USA" and "death to Israel." The other side, you get people chanting "death" to people, are those who generally are psychiatrically unhealthy and may not necessarily be even aware that what they're chanting is insightful, but they're doing it because of that psychiatric condition they may have. So anyway, that's how Bob Vylan came to prominence. Prior to this, I have to be honest, I actually didn't even know who Bob Vylan were. When I saw this guy on stage at Glastonbury on the videos chanting this kind of stuff, and then he was dancing around and he was like pretending to cry and saying like, "You want your country back," or something along those lines, I had no idea who this person was. So I had to kind of like do a bit of a deep dive. And I found out it was actually two people. They call themselves the Bobs. They don't give their real identities because apparently they call Britain a surveillance state and they don't want to be identified. That could very well be stage tactics, just like, you know, many bands do it. Cradle of Filth do it. You know, shock tactics. They don't necessarily believe what they're saying, but they have this whole persona of, oh, we're going to pretend that we are opposed to this surveillance state because it makes us look edgy. It makes us look cool. It gets us hip with the kids. You know, sorry, that's a little bit of really crap rapping kind of thing down there, but I hope you get what I mean. And many bands do that. They say this kind of stuff because it gets them media attention. And when you're a music artist, that's essentially what you want. You want to get that attention because it gets you the sales. But anyway, yeah, I found out or did research with this Bob Vylan thing. Two guys, apparently, from what I heard, they call themselves Bob Vylan because they don't like Bob Dylan, who is Jewish and has ties to Israel. But then I read a contrary argument saying that apparently that's not the case at all. Apparently they found the name Bob Vylan as a play on words quite humorous. I don't think we're ever going to get the true story. If we go after Bob Vylan, say, "Did you call yourselves villain because it's something anti-Semitic?" Of course they're going to say no. So either side you can take with a pinch of salt. But anyway, Bob Vylan did this thing at Glastonbury, and for the most part, I feel people found it quite distasteful because there was a criminal investigation about it. They got dropped from numerous other festivals, I believe, afterwards. And suddenly, and Bob Vylan just like floated into the night, like a train in the night. I don't know. They went off, and other things happened in life, and people then became more involved or more interested in CEOs getting caught out at Coldplay concerts with a woman who wasn't even his wife. People then started complaining about the cost of fuel going up again in England. People started complaining about all this other kind of stuff. And then we had the horrible, horrible case of the Ukrainian refugee in North Carolina who got stabbed in the neck by this guy who'd been in prison 14 times and he'd just been let out, and he vowed never to stab somebody again. And this Ukrainian lady, Irina, I believe her name was, came and sat on the bus or the train, whatever public transport it was, going either to work or coming home from work. This guy was sitting behind her, literally just pulled out a penknife, stood up, stabbed her in the neck. So people's attention came away from Bob Vylan. Then, a few days later, the tragic case of Charlie Kirk being shot happened. Bless him. And then suddenly, amongst all these social media posts of people saying stuff like, yeah, it's great that Charlie Kirk was shot. Yeah, he's a fascist, he's a racist, etc., etc., etc. Insert your insult here. Bob Vylan suddenly came on stage again. They'd been like in hibernation and they just like popped out. And this clip, which I saw, it did disturb me because, and again, sorry, I'm psychologically looking up there because that's where the TV is. That's where I saw it on. But it psychologically disturbed me because this clip was the same guy who'd been chanting death to the IDF. He was on stage again and he was topless. Not that anybody wants to see, you know, any guy's belly. I certainly don't, because I don't roll that way. But anyway, this guy then he had his microphone up and he was like, yeah, I want to dedicate this next song to a real piece of shit. Yeah, and then he goes on saying like, I don't know, bang bang Charlie Kirk or something like that. And he says like, yeah, rest in piss and all this kind of stuff. And he was basically, you know, calling Charlie Kirk, as the message that I felt from that was that this Bob Vylan was saying that, yeah, you deserve to get shot. You can find that clip quite easily on YouTube or any other social media. There are a few things disturbing with that. One, again, is glorifying, as we've already mentioned, somebody being killed. Now, I don't think that should ever be glorified, regardless if you like the person or not, regardless if you agree with what they're saying or not. To glorify somebody's death is distasteful. It's cold. It's quite sick. It's psychologically quite sick. And it says, I feel something about if person A was to glorify somebody's death, that would say more about person A than it would about the event itself, I feel. And I say, actually, well, that's not nice. Bearing in mind as well that he's left behind a widow and 2 kids, as we've clarified earlier as well, who are now going to grow up without a father figure. And I don't feel that's fair on them. And we should take them into consideration too. But also what I found very distasteful about this video, which Bob Vylan put out, calling somebody who's just been killed a piece of shit. Now, I can, to a degree, what he said about the IDF, I can appreciate to a degree. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I can appreciate maybe where he's coming from, because saying death to the IDF, and you think the IDF is an armed force, it's a military. You can understand military, they get involved in violence, they go on operations, there's rockets, there's guns, there's rounds going off. You can understand a lot of people being angry at armed forces. Again, irrespective of countries. But armed forces are there, sadly, for the purpose of violence. And if there weren't any wars, the armed forces won't have a job. And that's how it was described to me when I was in the Army Reserves myself. If there are no wars, we'll be out of a job, is what the captain said to me. And it's sick. I appreciate how sick that sounds. Even now, it doesn't really sit that well with me. But I can understand or I can appreciate to a degree Bob Vylan's gripe against the IDF. So yeah, sure, I don't agree with that sentiment. You're saying death to the IDF. but at least you're venting your anger at a military establishment. I can appreciate that. But then to call somebody who simply went around colleges to debate, encourage healthy debate, in a respectful manner, to then glorify his shooting and call him a piece of shit, to me, that actually kind of disturbed me. Like I said earlier, you don't have to like the guy, you don't have to agree with him, but you could still show some respect. And to call a dead person a piece of shit for all they were doing was going around encouraging healthy debate, that disturbed me. Saying stuff again like rest in piss, like. And then another thing actually as well, actually on the same stage, the Bob Vylan guy said, like, if you talk shit about people, you're going to get banged. So, okay, that's a bit ironic. I don't actually, as far as I'm aware, I could be wrong, but I'm not aware of Charlie talking shit about people or to people. But then likewise, the irony here is that Bob Vylan talking shit about a dead person and saying, if you talk shit about somebody, you're going to get banged. That sounds almost like prophetic in a way. And again, holding up my hands here, just in case anybody gets a wrong impression, I'm not saying that I'm wishing that on Bob Vylan. I'm certainly not going to do that myself. And I'm not encouraging people to do that either. As distasteful as this discourse is, I'm not encouraging that violence. And I wouldn't want anybody to go out and do that violence. The last thing as well, I actually found about this video, which was quite distasteful, was he then broke, after he did these salutations, these emotionally distressing salutations in a mocking tone to a dead person, he then started doing this weird dance where here's the figure, Bob Vylan on stage. He did this weird dance where he was jumping up and down with his knees. Now, I do that when I do my working out. There is this exercise I do where I stand there and I have my hands out like that, and I would jump up and down and try and touch my knees up to my hands. So it was like, ooh, you've now broken out into some sort of like workout routine or something. Additionally, with that, I found actually the audience contribution gave me some food for thought, because when he started saying all this, the audience members started cheering. When Bob Vylan started saying, yeah, Charlie, you're a piece of shit and rest in piss and, you know, you deserve to get banged or whatever it was, and he started doing this weird dance, the audience were like cheering and you know, shouting encouragement. I understand that, yeah, there's a lot of people who go, all the people there would have been Bob Vylan fans. And what we've seen from media, you'll get somebody who will say something, and if you're a fan, you'll generally agree with it. That's just part of psychology. That being said, my favorite band is Iron Maiden. If I went to an Iron Maiden gig and on stage Bruce Dickinson said something inflammatory about glorifying somebody being killed, I would question my loyalty to Iron Maiden right there and then. Because sure, I'm an Iron Maiden fan, but I'm still a humanitarian. And if there was anything in Iron Maiden which made me feel that it didn't present itself in a moral, ethical, holistic way, I would look at it and think, actually, am I supporting the right band here? So even if I was a fan of Bob Vylan and I was in that audience and he then started talking ill of dead people and saying what he said, I would look at it and think, hang on a second, I've spent a lot of money on a ticket to come here to watch you sing and perform, and instead all I'm getting is you just slagging off dead people. And I'd feel very uncomfortable if I was in that audience. As a matter of fact, I was thinking about this actually like this morning about self-reflecting back on this gig. I would pretty much just turned and just walked out. And I probably would have actually demanded a refund as well, to be honest. I'd say like true music fans don't go to gigs to hear political stuff. You go there for the love of the music. And if you want to take a quote from Bob Marley, music can unite people, and music is meant to be about love and bringing people together. I've actually made some quite good friends over the course of my life for the same sharing of musical interests. And these are people who I may not have actually necessarily liked beforehand, but as soon as I've realized, yeah, you're a fellow Iron Maiden fan, you like Megadeth, you like Overkill, you like Testament, you like Exodus, you like Halloween, you like Deftones, you like Soundgarden, you like Audioslave, you like Pig Destroyer, you like Dying Fetus. Dying Fetus. I'm not a fan of Dying Fetus, but you get the point. But when you realize it, actually, a person you dislike likes the same kind of music as you, it generally draws you together. And think about when you go on a date with people as well, or you want to get to know like that really gorgeous woman, you say, oh, what music are you into? Because that's usually the precursor of, I'm going to like you based on what kind of music you listen to, because music's more than just that. Music's not just something you listen to. Music is something that brings people together. It's much deeper. And that's what it should be. Music should be about enjoyment. Music should be about peace. Music should be about, I'm sounding a bit like a 1960s hippie, I appreciate, but it should be something which is calming on the soul. It should be about exploring who you are as a person. That is, I feel, the beauty of music, regardless of genre. It doesn't have to be rock. It doesn't have to be hip hop. It doesn't have to be drill. It doesn't have to be grunge. It doesn't have to be neoclassical. It doesn't have to be acid jazz. It doesn't have to be thrash metal. It doesn't have to be any of this kind of stuff. It doesn't matter what the genre is, but it's meant to be something which unifies. It's not meant to be something which splits and divides people, and especially not in such a disrespectful manner. What do I hope for, specifically for Bob Vylan? Like I said, do I wish any harm on Bob Vylan? No. Do I like the guy? It's only the one person I see making these kind of remarks. Do I like Bob Vylan as a music group? No. Do I like them as people? I can imagine I probably won't get on with them. If I was to kind of like meet them in a bar, I certainly wouldn't see myself sharing drinks with them. But that being said, I don't wish any harm on them. I respect the fact that they have opinions. I respect the fact very much that they are entitled to their opinions. And this is coming from somebody who identifies as a libertarian. Part of defending freedom of speech is that you don't just defend your own freedom of speech. You have to be prepared to defend other people's, especially if they sometimes disagree with you. What Bob Vylan said, I felt was distasteful. I found it disrespectful, especially when you're talking about dead people as well. Generally speaking, again, something which I learned for days when I was in the armed forces was you don't talk ill of the dead. As a matter of fact, a lot of the time, what we were taught is actually you don't talk about the dead at all. And if you were to talk about them, it would only be in respectful terms. So I feel that maybe, that being said, Bob Vylan needs to actually go away and actually look at maybe what he's feeling on, or they're feeling on the inside, is very much a projection. They may be feeling something more deep-rooted, a lot more traumatic. And if you want to get Freudian, something which goes back to maybe their childhood. Maybe they experienced something in their childhood which they're still trying to process, or they're still trying to, that needs exploration and needs resolving, but it hasn't been. And that's why a lot of what they're saying is then coming out directed and projected at other people who they don't agree with or didn't agree with. In an ideal world, I feel that's what should happen. And I feel as well, actually, when you're a music artist, you have a huge amount of influence, a huge amount. And a lot of people in history, especially like rock music, a lot of rock and especially heavy metal music has been attributed to violence. If you actually met heavy metal artists, most of them are the most chilled, mellow people you're ever going to get. And actually, a lot of heavy metal is not advocating violence at all, despite the very aggressive nature of heavy metal, especially if you get like thrash metal and the more extreme ends of metal, like black metal. Actually, no, hold me on black metal, because Norwegian black metal is a completely different kettle of fish. And I feel if I was to discuss Norwegian black metal, that will complicate issues. But generally speaking, Iron Maiden, again, were accused in the 80s of being Satanists. Nothing could be further from the truth.
Many members of Iron Maiden are devout Christians. You know, they're married, they have kids. But that being said, when you are in a musical group or an act or a band, you have so much influence based on what you say and what you do. And your fans will follow every single word that you say. They'll follow every single action that you do. And because they hold you in such high regard and high esteem, some fans who may be a bit more impressionable will see what you do and think, wow, that must be the cool thing to do. And I'm going to do that because the people I idolize, Bob Vylan, are going around saying it too. So it must be good. So I feel that from a professional perspective, they should very much assess what they're actually saying. They should also, from a moral standpoint, address maybe that, or really delve into actually maybe how is this influencing our fans. Because one thing I learned from life is monkey see, monkey do. There's something in psychology called social learning theory, and that's where people learn behaviors by observing the behaviors of others and seeing what kind of reactions come around. Social learning theory, and that was proposed by a guy called Bandura. You can look that up go onto YouTube, type in Bobo Dole experiment by Bandura, and that is social learning theory in practice. And that's what a lot of fans would do if they see acts like Bob Vylan acting out the way they do, because they think that's a cool thing to do, and especially if there's no repercussions. Hey, Ben. I was going to say the guys from Mayhem were pretty intense. My brother went to who is it he saw? He saw Testament in London when he was a teenager, and he came back and his shirt was all ripped, and he basically didn't even have a shirt. It had just been destroyed, and yeah. I met this Canadian chiropodist as well when I worked at a care home for learning difficulties. This chiropodist was like cutting guys' toenails as they do. And he saw I was wearing a Nine Inch Nails t-shirt, and he commented on it. He was like, "Oh, I saw Nine Inch Nails in Toronto." And I said to him, "Oh, how'd it go?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'm surprised I even made it out alive." But the thing is with those metal gigs, it's organized chaos. And you know that when you go to a metal, especially when you go into a mosh pit, people are not there to kill you. People are not even there to hurt you. And it's weird because it is organized chaos. It looks chaotic from an outsider perspective, but there are people in that mosh pit who are looking out for you. And if they see that you're in trouble, they will grab you, they'll pull you out of the situation, and they'll actually protect you. They'll keep the other people aware. They'll be like, stand back. I'd feel more comfortable being in a mosh pit for a band like Deicide than I would at a Bob Vylan concert for the way things are going. Sorry, Ben, actually, I mean, I was just actually using this. I said at the very, very, very beginning of the live stream, actually, this was literally just like a test live stream because I know I've been having some issues with the live streaming app or whatever you want to call it. The setting on YouTube, it kept conking out and saying like connection unstable, and it was just burning out my live streams. So I was filming for like hours, and it was only taking like a few minutes of. So I wanted to do this. Basically, it was just like a test, really, and then seeing how this went, seeing if that problem had been rectified, and then saying, right, now I can go back onto live streams. So yeah, I've used this opportunity to talk about my thoughts about Charlie Kirk, my thoughts and feelings about the reactions to Charlie Kirk's death, focusing as a concept on Bob Vylan and their actions and reactions to Charlie Kirk's death via onstage performances and what they've said and how they've behaved. Cognitive behavior therapy is based on three components, which are thoughts affect your feelings, which then in turn affect your behaviors. So if you want to know why somebody's behaving in a certain way, ask them to explain what they're feeling. They'll tell you, I don't know, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling lonely. Then you ask them to explore their thoughts. So you say, okay, so what thoughts have made you feel lonely? Oh, okay, I think that nobody likes me. I think that I'm a bit of a loner in the world. I think that my girlfriend's going to dump me. thoughts, feelings, behaviors. I heard someone called Bob Vylan Spliff Richards, which I thought was funny. Yeah. That's kind of cool, actually. Spliff Richards. I'm gonna get a T-shirt with that on. I want to get T-shirt. I want to get many T-shirts with many things on them. I saw one actually the other day. It had like Greta Thunberg, and she looked like an Oompa Loompa with her new haircut. That being said, guys in the live stream, feel free to actually type your thoughts and feelings and your behaviors. Let's use this as a group therapy. At the end of the day, because essentially, yeah, we've got 7 people in the group therapy session. Who would like to go first with their thoughts and feelings? Or you can even type your associated behaviors. You don't even need to put your name. This isn't Alcoholics Anonymous, so you don't have to say like what your name is, but what do you feel? No, let's start with thoughts. What do you think about what's happened with Charlie Kirk? Hey, we've got it. I'm sorry, I'm probably axing your name here. Please forgive me. Ip Heckley Kennedy. Thank you for visiting. My train is late. Is it justified that I'm mad? That depends what you mean by mad. Now we're bringing critical discursive psychology into play and discourse psychology, which is the study of language. If you can elaborate on what you mean by mad, then we can explore that concept. Oh, it elaborates. People die every day. It's sad, but I don't get why there's all this news. Truth be told, I have thought that myself. Again, there's actually, I can draw a correlation there. There is an Iron Maiden song called Fear is the Key, and one of the lines actually says, people, something like, children are dying, but nobody cares because somebody famous dies. And yeah, I have seen that myself. I mean, I have seen the stuff that Trump said about like flying flags at half-mast. Personally, I did look at it and think, okay, that's a little bit maybe OTT from my perspective. Yeah, there was this thing as well where in some big Kennedy Space Center, I think it was, they were going to do this big memorial or what have you. I could be wrong on that, but there was some big memorial which is supposed to happen in honor of the late Charlie Kirk. Personally, I look at it and think I feel that could be a bit too much, because I don't feel as though that this death, it's a tragic situation, but I feel it's going to run the risk now of becoming political. It's going to be a tool to be used, and again, if I was Charlie Kirk's wife or his children, I wouldn't want that happening. So if I was to suddenly get shot and I was to become this political icon, whether it's for the left or for the right, I personally wouldn't want that, and I'm sure my family wouldn't want that of me either. I wouldn't want, not that I want the death of my parents or any member of my family anyway, but if one of my members of the family were to die and suddenly they were turned into this political narrative, I'd be extremely hurt. I'd actually say, look, I appreciate what you're saying. I appreciate the respect you've shown, but please, can we just leave it at that? I don't want it becoming a freak show, basically. I don't want people in the street who I don't know going around and doing stuff in my name, because what they're doing may not necessarily be good. And I wouldn't necessarily want to be associated with that. I get that it's gruesome and caught on camera. I'll be honest, it was shocking to see the video because I avoid any type of gore video, but I just hope it doesn't become commonplace. Yeah, and a thing as well, actually, is that we don't want now retaliation. And we don't want violent retaliation. When I say we, that sounds going back again to in-group, out-group. I don't mean it like that, but as a society, I don't feel that society would want to see violent retaliation, because then that gets into the whole eye for an eye concept. And you know, I'm Jewish, and part of the early Judeo-Christian teachings are very much based on eye for an eye type stuff. But does it solve anything? Because all you're doing is just you're rewarding an act of violence with an act of violence, and then it's giving the people you've been violent towards an excuse to be violent towards you, which then in turn gives you another excuse to be violent towards them. Where does it stop? You've just created a wheel which is just not stopping. I feel sad about his death, but I won't mourn him. That's my opinion, and that's fair enough. You know, you're entitled to your opinion, and I respect that. Yeah, I didn't particularly care for his politics, but that video was shocking. Seeing anybody die is shocking. Even hearing about it, I mean, many people I've supported with mental health needs over the years. There was one guy I supported who, I remember I was supporting him one day, and we were talking about the rock band Dangerous Toys. I mean, he was a cool guy. He was quite an old guy. He told me the story that he'd been attacked by a tiger. No, it was a lion. He took a group of kids. He worked as a teacher. He took a group of kids to a zoo, and this is before the lions were like kept well in the depth of their compound. The lions were allowed to run up to the bars, and he had his back to the bars, and he was talking to the kids. And this lion came up behind him and like slashed him, and it like slashed the back of his head, and it caused brain injury. So he had operation, and you know, he was saved, but he wasn't the same guy again because of a brain injury. And I used to really enjoy supporting him. He was a cool guy. He used to be into rock music and everything. And yeah, I remember one day we were just talking about the band Dangerous Toys, and we were watching some of the videos on YouTube. Then the next day he didn't turn up. So we inquired with his family, and they were like, yeah, he literally died like that night. And it was weird because I distinctly remember it was just like 12 hours before. We were just joking about rock music, and then he was gone. At least they caught the guy. Yeah, yeah, which is good. You know, I hope that yeah, death is it's one of those things. You could see death day in, day out, and like I said, my work as a bereavement counsellor, you see the effect death has on people, and it's varied, and people respond to death in different ways. Some people like to throw themselves into work. Some people are very expressive with how it makes them feel. Some people try to joke it off. Some people become quite maladaptive in their strategies. They take to illicit substances or what have you. Some people kill themselves. They see no way out. They feel that pain is just so intense, and they feel that the only way they can actually relieve themselves is to literally kill themselves. All the cases that I've worked with of people who are mourning or going through grief are different. Nobody processes death in the same identical way. It's a very person-centered, it's a very unique concept, and there's no right or wrong way to process or come to terms with your grief. And it's the hardest thing to do. It's up to you. It's up to you how you process that. People can help in the best way they can. People can support. They can always be there as a level of support, but nobody can say to you, you should process your grief in this way, or you should do this, you should do that. Because actually what you're doing then is that word should, you're implying that what the person is doing is intrinsically wrong. So, well, I've just seen my husband get shot. How the fuck do you think I should process that? Oh, you should go outside for a walk. Look, the sun's shining. It's a lovely day. Like, if somebody said that to me, I'd be like, fuck yourself. It's like, you go for a walk. Yeah, it's a sunny day. Shove it up your fucking ass. So it's something that it's a horrible, horrible thing, and it's probably going to be one of the most difficult things that anybody will have to do. But they'd have to process that by themselves. But use that support which is offered. Use the support which is there, because that will make it somewhat easier. And I'm not going to say it will make it easy, but it will make it easier than trying to process that grief by yourself. R.I.P. to Ricky Hitman Hatton as well. Has Ricky Hatton died? I wasn't aware. If he has, then again, that's horrible to hear. But likewise, being like, sorry, cat. Yeah, poor guy. No, my thoughts and feelings to his friends and family. But that's another example, because I was never a Hatton fan. He wasn't my favorite boxer. But that being said, again, it's not nice to hear that kind of stuff. He meant something to someone somewhere, and that's, I feel, when it comes to death, is that we should always be mindful of, is that person may not necessarily mean anything to us, but to somebody they meant the world. He was only 43. He's young. My condolences. Who was your favorite boxer, and why was it Muhammad Ali? Muhammad Ali wasn't my favorite boxer. Sorry, one of my cats is on top of the cupboard and started making strange noises. My favorite boxer, I'd say actually Joe Calzaghe. I almost met him this weekend. I was in Cardiff in Wales this weekend, and I came so close to meeting him. But I overslept. And I missed my ticket. But hey ho. In terms of competitions, actually, I've got the next competition lined up for next month. Whoa! What are you doing, cat? You've frozen the screen. Hello, come say hi. This is Jahangir, named after a Indian king. Yes, you go over there and have a purr. Oh, you want to come back? No, you stay there. You look out the window. Okay, so anyway, guys, let's end. This has been, I appreciate, it's meant to be, like I said, a test. It was just to see if I can get my live streams working again. It wasn't meant to be anything in depth, and ironically, it has turned into something quite in depth. I feel this has been quite a dark live stream. Quite often, I mean, Rob, where is our friend? Where is Rob? He's always here. He's probably working. Ben is. Oh, hang on. What's your take about Jekyll and Hyde? Do you think it was about alcoholism? People normally think Jekyll turned into Hyde and had no control, but he did have control the whole time. I believe it was dissociative identity disorder. I've not worked with many people with DID. Most of my experiences have come with people with EUPD, emotionally unstable personality disorder, ASPD, antisocial personality disorder, and narcissistic personality disorder, NPD. What I understand from DID, depending on how intense the DID diagnosis is. No, you stay there. We're talking about psychiatry. depending on how strong the DID is, determines what the other personalities do. If it's quite a weak DID, from what I understand, you'll still get the core personality, which is like the baseline, so to speak. That's when you don't see the other personalities. That is like the quote, I know this is unprofessional language, but the pure personality of that individual. They will occasionally, what is known as blip into the other personalities, but they'll still very much be aware of what they've done. So for instance, me, as my core personality could be Sam, but one of my blips or other personalities could be Bob, not Bob Vylan. Bruce and Sid could be another one. But if I've got quite a weak DID diagnosis, I'll be aware of when I blip into these other personalities, and I'll generally know when I've gone into another personality. If I have a stronger diagnosis of DID, that's when you're unaware that you go into somebody else's personality. And that's why there have been some cases of people who I've worked with who've said that they would literally be themselves one moment, then they'll wake up and they'll find themselves like in another part of the country, like sleeping on the street or something. They're like, how did I get here? And what's happened is because they've actually blipped into the other personality, they've become another person. And that person then says, I'm going to walk from Manchester to, I don't know, Southampton. And they'll walk all this distance. They'll have like a whole day in the life of being this other person. And then they'll blip back into like the baseline, the main personality. And that personality then be like, well, what have I done during this time? It's almost like a blackout moment. And that becomes quite dangerous, because during these blip moments, that other personality could have, I don't know, committed a crime, done something really bad. And the core personality wouldn't be aware of it. So when the police come knocking on the door, they're like, yeah, you were seen committing a crime at this date or at this time. That personality would be like, I didn't do that. But they'd be quite genuinely truthful, because as far as they're aware, they didn't do it. But DID, it's oddly enough, I was thinking about this the other day, DID is an area of psychiatry I want to get more involved into. I think I'm very much too involved in psychiatry as it is. I really do need a break. At the moment, I'm specializing in children with sexualized trauma. But DID is something which I would like to learn more about and get more experience. So with the case of Jekyll and Hyde, that actually could have been a case of dissociative identity disorder, but a more extreme diagnosis. And of course, that was like the 19th century, when psychiatry wasn't as advanced as what it is today. Go back through psychiatry throughout history. Joan of Arc, we now realize she had schizophrenia. At the time, her supporters, believed she was talking to God. Her enemies, the Burgundians and the English, believed she was talking to the devil. King Henry VI, he had various personality disorders. So did Edward II. Richard II, we believe, had a personality disorders. William the Conqueror, I think it was speculated, had certain conditions. Always like Nicolini. I do have to go to work now, but you have a new subscriber. No, thank you very much, and thank you for your contributions as well. Like I said, usually this channel is related to martial arts. Today I just wanted to do something completely different. But when we do live streams, we usually do it in the evenings. We usually have beers out, we have music playing, and we literally let our hair down, and we talk about anything and everything, as ridiculous as it is. So yeah, any ideas, just put them forward and I'll do my best. But no, thanks so much for your contributions. Hope you have a good day at work, and hopefully see you on. That being said, Ben, I'm actually going to head off as well, actually, because it's awkward sitting in this position. But I may have some more news for you in regards to moving. Finally got some good news. Yes, I will be moving to a country that doesn't, or a region that doesn't speak English as a first language. Yeah, I'll have to learn some Gaelic. But yeah, happy days. I'll keep it all up to date. Please just keep checking out the community posts I do on my channel. I'm always putting stuff on there as well. Any ideas for videos, martial arts related, otherwise, talk more about psychiatry, talk about music, anything at all. We could even talk about really rubbish games or rubbish horror movies. Ice Cream Man is a good one. Itchy the Killer is another amusing film. Not condoning killing, by the way. But catch you later, Ben. Everybody, thank you so much for joining and for listening to my whiny voice. Have a lovely day. Stay safe. Train hard. Keep being cool, guys. And keep listening to Iron Maiden, because they're the best band around. Ciao for now.